Can you guys see my participants window when I share my screen like this?
Yes,
Yes.
I see it.
Okay. Okay, the first thing I wanted to talk about was let everybody know, I have to update my slide here shortly, but there's two places you can see where the next online SIG is coming from. One of them is our homepage at sdfwa.org. And when you look at the homepage, you will see the text out there, like where it says Fast Start SIG, and there's both a Zoom link and a PunchPass link. So if you use PunchPass, the good news is it will send you an email about 10 minutes before the meeting's supposed to start to remind you to go there and send you with the password and the meeting number. Down below, there is a link that shows you our recap of our previous videos. So if you missed out on one, you can see it there. It's actually kind of fun. I've been, I don't do all of these, fortunately. So it's a good place. And you can also see them all on our San Diego YouTube site. And I guess now I should get the link for our forum up there too, so you can see them all there also. A couple of things here. The screen you can see is the participant screen, which is a little bit different than the host screen. Not that it matters, but so I was trying to show you. On the far left-hand side, there's a picture of a microphone. That allows you to mute or unmute your microphone if you want. A pro tip is generally leave your microphone muted, and if you want to say something, just hold down the space bar and it will unmute your microphone while you're holding down the space bar. The little up chevrons on either side of the mute and video allow you to select the source. Some people have more than one camera and more than one microphone. The video icon starts and stops the video, so that the participants window, we just saw that a second ago, shows you who is participating. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Chat is a very nice way to, you have a thought you want to share with everybody. You can do it via chat. It doesn't interrupt the flow of the meeting. Screen share is the button, the green button on the bottom. The way we have our meeting set up right now is everybody can share their screen. Hopefully we won't have anything bad happen from doing that, but the record button right now is set up that only the host can record. If you really want to, you can ask and I can give you, or the host can give you permission to record the thing. Reaction brings up the thumbs up for the applaud. Leave meeting leaves the meeting for you. In the participants window, there's a zoom control. Down in the lower right-hand side, there is an ellipsis. If you press that, one of the choices is you can merge it to the meeting. It's a little more convenient that way because when you merge it to the meeting, you can see the mute, and you can also see the thing that raises your hands. When we have bigger meetings, sometimes we'll mute everybody and ask you to raise your hand if you have a point of order or something you want to pass on. Chat, again, the same ellipsis, you can say merge it to the side of your meeting if you want. Just remember about chat, it's not private and it is recorded, so don't say anything you don't want publicized to the rest of the world. It's already gotten people fired at different sundry works. Again, the pro tip on the things, please mute your microphone so we don't hear you moving a chair or whatever all you're doing. If you want to contribute, raise your hand. I'll try to recognize you. I'm not going to force everybody to stay muted, so you can also unmute and say something. The other thing I like to ask people to do, makes my life easier and to prevent Zoom bombing, is use your real name in your screen. You know, if XYZ123 joins, I don't know who that is, and I may assume it's a bad guy or other hosts there. And that, gentlemen, is all I've got. And I would like to hand it over to our peerless leader, in this case, Mr. Dallas Keck, with his presentation on vacuum clamping. And if I can find my participant screen, I will highlight him.
We up and running now?
Ready to go.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. And thanks, Mike, for getting this set up and running us through the details of using Zoom. It's always a good reminder, and we always have a few new members who are not aware of it, of how the system works. I do encourage you to put your microphone on mute until you're ready to speak. That if you keep it on mute and when you're ready to speak, you just push the space bar. It's an easy way just to push to talk, and that keeps it.
Oops.
Okay, we're going to talk about vacuum clamping today, and it's something that I just kind of got interested in after using my vacuum pump for a long time just for vacuum pressing. I got interested in vacuum clamping too, and I find it to be something that's useful and something I wanted to share with each of you. There's others of us who have been playing with this over time, but I think there's others who would benefit from having that as an available tool in your tool bag. So why would you vacuum clamp? There's quite a few reasons you do it. For one thing, it's really handy if you're making multiple parts. You have to put something down and sand it and then move it around, or put down another part that's identical, and you don't want to have to clamp and put pieces down. It just takes extra time. If you can just move them in and out real quickly with a vacuum clamp, makes a big difference. The other advantage is that it doesn't leave marks on your material. Sometimes when you're clamping, you're going to have some sort of a pad or something to prevent scarring of your material. With a vacuum clamp, you don't have that problem, and that's another big advantage. Sometimes it's just hard to clamp thin stock. You know, if you're sanding something that's only a 1/4 inch or even a 1/2 inch, you can't use get up to the edge sanding and have a clamp on top, and you can sand the whole piece without having to worry about the clamps being in the way. And then the last area that I'm aware of that would be the last two areas that you might be using it. One is with CNCs. I don't have a CNC at home, but if I did, I think I'd be setting up a vacuum clamp system so that I could just suck my material down to the material, do my CNC routing, and then move on without have to worry about taping and clamping and having anything in the way of my cutters. And then the last area that we haven't done too much of yet, but some people do, is you can actually use vacuum chucks on lathes. I've seen that done. I'm amazed at how well it holds, but it does work. And we haven't got that set up here at the shop yet, but it's something that you can do and is done quite frequently. Nice for bowls, and the turners can tell you more about that than I can. So those are the reasons you might want to use a vacuum clamp system. I just think it's kind of an interesting activity, and I'm just amazed at how much power you get from vacuum. The clamping pressure you get with a vacuum bag or a vacuum press is impressive. It's just, you're not going to replicate it any other way. But the clamping power you get from a vacuum clamp is equally impressive. You can really hold a piece down, do what you need to do, and quickly remove it. All big advantages. So I'm going to take you through, that's the reasons we do that. I'm going to take you through and just show you what the components of a system is for those of you who are not familiar with it. And then I'll talk about the specifics of the components and the system I've got and the system that we're setting up here at the shop. And some specifics for some people who may choose to make their own system. If you already have a vacuum pump, it's not an expensive thing to add to your repertoire. So the system we have here at the shop, we have a really nice vacuum pump. Would you switch to my iPhone, Mike? Yep. We've got a really nice vacuum pump here that pulls a great vacuum, and it's a nice little system. The components are, the heart of the system, of course, is the pump. You connect the vacuum system up through a vacuum line, just like you would for a vacuum press. It goes through a foot switch, in my case, which turns the vacuum on and off. Just with a touch of the switch, you turn it on, and you turn it off. I've got another switch here. You can see a little bit closer. This one's a little different. This one is not set so that this one you press to hold it down, and then when you release, it's going to let loose the piece. And I've got a jet going over top, so I'm going to hold off for 1 second here. Oh, I guess you're gone by.
Your finger is covering partial lens. There you go. Thanks.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. This one is just momentary action. You just hold it down to clamp something down. If you just need it for a quick action, let it up and it's going to release. And then the final components of the system are the vacuum clamps themselves. And there's a lot of different configuration of these. The ones we're looking at right here are some that I've made here at the shop on the CNC. And these are made with the high density. Travis, step in and help me here. What is that stuff called? It's the stuff you see a lot of times on cutting boards.
Polypropylene. Yeah.
What is it?
HDPE is what they call it.
And it's some that I picked up in the $2 bin over there at the plastic store. And so all these pucks, I think I've probably got a pound worth of material, including the waste pieces. Now they're connected together with little hoses, and they're set up in my configuration, they're set up in a matrix. These are set up as pods, and they're just screwed down. The outside of the pieces are screwed down with onto whatever configuration you want, and they're connected with little vacuum lines. The vacuum lines that I'm using here are simply the hose that you would use on a drip irrigation system. It's just tubing that comes from Home Depot, 1/4-inch tubing. You can buy 50 foot of it for $10 or whatever it is. It's nothing special at all. And I just cut it to whatever length and set it up in a matrix. Now I've mounted mine on just a piece of scrap plywood, and I clamp it down to my workbench. And here we're at the shop. I'm using the shop's bench. My workbench at home, I've got it set up similar to the Festool system, where you have the spacing at 96 millimeters in a matrix. So I can just put mine down at any point and just clamp it down into the system, into the holes. Here, because the spacing of the dog holes were not at 96 millimeters, I used one of the bench holes, and then I used the one in the vise and created a multiple of 96 millimeters to hold it down. It works well. The vise always had a little racking, so there's a little bit of movement that goes with that. Now, you notice it's clamped down with something that's low profile. I make my own little clamps that go into my bench holes. These are just some things I've 3D printed. Here's some other examples of them. And they're just two pieces that slide past each other. And when you clamp them together, when you screw them in together, they expand out and they hold really tight. So you can put it into a hole, just spin that down, and you're not going to move that at all. So the way I've done this one, instead of having a knob on the top, I've made it flush by putting in a flat head washer, and it has a hex key in it. I just use a key to put it in. Real simple thing, but it really works well, and it keeps the knobs out of my way when I'm sanding. So there's no problem with that. So that's the components of the system that we have. This is the system that I use at home. All these components I plan to have here at the shop. I intended to make some more of these pucks and have them here at the shop, but unfortunately our plastic supplier shut down for retail operations. You can go ahead and switch back to the other camera, Michael, if you would.
Okay. You're unmuted, Pete, by the way.
Yeah.
Would you take questions now?
Sure.
I see Peter had his up before I did, but I'll follow him.
Real quick, Dallas. So the way you have those pucks hooked up, so all all of them draw vacuum at the same time? Is there a way that you can separate like one row at a time, or is there any use to that?
Yes, if you go back to spotlighting my phone, if you notice the pucks, here's one that it's not put together. It doesn't have does not have the gaskets in it. I drilled holes in the sides of these,
Mm-hmm.
and the hole goes all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using little plugs that are made for the powder coating industry to plug screw holes when they powder coat. So they don't want to get powder coating into the threads. They use these silicone plugs. I just plug up any hole I'm not using. So if I want to use this puck only, I simply take one of these plugs and put it in all the units I'm not using, and then I can just use one puck at a time.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Now these two clamps over here are some I bought commercially a long time ago, and they've got a ball valve in the center that work reasonably well. They kind of leak a little bit. These don't leak at all, the ones I've made. But the advantage of this is you just push something down, when you push the material on, it opens the valve and goes. I've attempted to make that in my own. Here's a failed prototype I made. I tried to do this on my own, getting some ball valves I bought online. The problem was that the springs were too weak, and as soon as you pull a vacuum, they open up, and it just turns into a little buzzer that vibrates opening and closing. So I haven't found a ball valve that works as well. And the simplicity of having these little plugs is easy. They're cheap, and I just plug them in wherever I'm not using them.
So just one more thing. So if you had, for example, on this board, you have 6 pucks.
Right.
Would the difference in vacuum pull be significant when you have all 6 open as opposed to closing down 4 of them or whatever?
You're going to get much better vacuum holding power when you have 6. And it's directly related to the amount of surface area that you have. It's directly proportional to that.
Yeah.
It's pounds per square foot.
Yeah. That's
so the bigger the surface area, the more holding power you're going to have.
Sure. Okay.
If you try and do it with a small one, I've made a few small ones. This is a smaller version of the same thing. You see that?
Yeah.
That won't hold as well, but sometimes you have a small board. So, so Michael, if you switch back.
Yep. Hey, Dallas.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your gaskets? What is that?
Okay, I wasn't going to get into making these, but I'll just talk about making them. I actually cut these on the CNC, and I just cut a channel through the center of or around the shape I wanted to have, and left a rim. The gasket material is simply foam that is used for screen doors and windows. You can get it at Home Depot. Now there's 2 different types of foam you can get. You can get the high density stuff, and you can get the normal stuff. I'm not sure why you'd use the other, but the high density is what's required for the vacuum. The thin stuff will just collapse and not give you a good seal. So I just cut a channel that's the length of the circumference of that circle, and put it in the channel. Now you want when you put it in, you're not going to be able to see this well, but the gasket, of course, is proud of the top of the piece. So I actually cut this channel with a 5mm bit and end mill, and then I used the gasket material is 1/4 inch, so it's a little bit wider than that. Presses in, and it also I cut it about I think I cut it. Can't remember now, 3 or 4. I experimented with different depths, but it leaves a couple of millimeters above the top of the surface, and when you put it in, it just compresses down and gives you a good tight seal.
Cool. I need to ask another question about making it. And guys, last time you gave this pitch, he inspired me so much. I went out and bought all the pieces. I still don't have the PVC I need, but knowing how it goes together and knowing how relatively simple it is, it's a project worth considering. Dallas, when you use that drip system tubing to connect the units, do you have just a friction fit, or have you also used some sort of epoxy or something to actually lock it in to seal it?
No, I just use, it's just friction fit, and it will hold a vacuum for a long time.
Wow, okay.
The outside of that tubing is 1/4 inch. I just drill a 1/4 inch hole wherever I want to put it. It's just friction fit, and it works well.
Cool. And you basically penetrate all the way to the midpoint so that you reach the hole that is in the middle.
Well, it depends on the puck I'm making. Some pucks I go all the way through because I want to connect, have a channel.
Got it.
So for instance, the one I'm holding up here actually has 4 openings with a center opening, so a total of 5 different places where you can go through. So if you had a big array, this one might be in the center, and you'd have connections going to 4 other locations or a supply line.
And you could also, I suppose, plug them as you do the center one with those spray caps.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Michael, once again, would you go to my... So if you look at this one, for instance,
Oh, yeah.
This one has 4 connections on it. It's got a tube going out to the right, one to the left, one up above, and one out here, but that's plugged over here on this side.
Got it.
And I've just got different configurations. I actually could make them all with the plugs. I don't know why I didn't. Probably just get lazy on the drilling.
Got it. And one last question. Your foot switch, one was toggle and the other one was only vacuuming while it was depressed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
which
the only
one-
reason that I've got them, the only reason I have the momentary action one,
Yeah.
is because the toggle function broke,
Oh.
and I found it was kind of handy. Rick, are you still on? Rick's not there.
He was muted.
Yeah, he had a contractor coming over. Go ahead and take me off again.
Sure.
Hey, Dallas, the one that we just purchased, was it momentary or toggle?
Toggle.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The reason I kept the one that was broken is because Rick was doing cabinet drawers, and he had, we were using dominoes to make that over at my house. And he had, I don't know, he's probably making 30 or 40 drawers, each one of them being put together with dominoes. So each end of the drawer had 2 cuts. So he had maybe 400 or 500 cuts to make on the domino. Well, we found that by putting on the vacuum clamp, holding it down just long enough to make the cuts, you could do it a lot faster than having to go up and down with the switch each time. So the momentary action was really handy when you're doing that many cuts in a production environment.
Thank you.
Okay, let me do just a quick little demo of how this works. Our vacuum pump's going to make a little noise in the background, so it's probably going to be a little irritating. I'll push it back as far as I can to get it away. Right now my switch is on, and we're pulling 27 inches of vacuum. I've got a piece of cherry here that I pulled out of the bin. I just set it on there. You see it's coming up here easily. I've got it clamped down now. There's no way you're going to move that. Let me take a hand plane here to it. I'm going against the grain, so you can see it's taking a lot of pressure to move that. But that piece is, if I wanted to flip it, just do that, and it's back down again. Now I've got the grain right. So it's just that easy to move things around if you're moving things around. Now, really handy for CNC, for carvers like to use it. I can see it for that, but there's no way you're going to have it. Now, there's a couple of things you should know. I've got cherry on here right now. If you have a piece of MDF or white oak or something that's quite porous, something that's quite porous, you're going to get some leakage through there. It's not terrible, and it will hold very well. But if you had a smaller piece with a small surface area and say a 1/4 inch of white oak, it's not going to hold well enough. The trick to that is you just put wide blue tape on the back, and then you can do whatever you want with it. It's gonna hold down nice and tight. What else can I tell you about? I think that's pretty much it. Now, Sam had some has been doing this, and Sam had some interesting pucks that he's been using. Maybe we can come over, Sam, and you could share what you've done.
Okay, let me see if I can share. Okay, so this is, there are 3 pucks on a rail, and you can move these around, and these have valves on them like Dallas was describing before, where if you press it down, it enables the vacuum. So you can put a piece of wood on here and push it down, and it'll suck that up without leaking vacuum here. So that's one kind. Let's see. This is a jig that allows you to pan and rotate, you know, to hold a piece of work in whatever position you want. And I use that for, you stick a guitar on here on the back of the guitar, and you can hold it at different angles to work on it. So that's another interesting one. And then this one is the one I use the most, which, you know, I just clamp onto the bench, and I put the wood on here, and I use it for routing edges where, you know, so you don't get things that get in the way or sanding. And so those are my jigs. Any questions?
You made them all from scratch, right, Sam?
No, I actually bought these from Vacuum Clamp, and they had a closeout sale, and it was a good price. So I thought, well, I'll try those, and those are, I bought those then. So those are all commercial.
I was
And
teasing.
I think, pardon?
I was teasing.
Oh, no, I plan to build some like Dallas. I think that's a good idea. I could make my own.
I'm happy to share the VCAR file I've got for that. As soon as we can get the material, I'm going to be making some for the shop, and I've ordered a foot switch. That's basically all we're going to need for here at the shop is a few pucks and the foot switch. I found that these switches, you can buy them from Joe Woodworker. That's a great site, by the way, for vacuum clamping and vacuum press. He sells this foot switch as a system. He charges $120 or something for it though. But I've been able to buy these from Alibaba, the AliExpress. What we pay for these, Travis, I gave you the link to that. It was under $20, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was $12.
Yeah. So the foot switches you can get very inexpensively from there. But there's a big difference in the switches. If you decide you want to buy one from those, shoot me an email and I'll give you the proper link, because there's a lot of different choices here on the setup of these switches. They have about 30 different configurations, believe it or not. And I'll show you the one that's really the best one to use.
Is there a minimum vacuum pump specs that would be needed for effective clamping?
I'm sure there is some minimum. I actually have 2 pumps. I've got a small one that I'm guessing it's maybe 1 to 2 CFM. And I used that for a long time. It worked well. I find I don't use that pump anymore, but just because I've got the much larger one, I've got set up in a permanent thing where I just turn it on and plug it. I don't have the piping and everything set, so it doesn't take me any time to set it up. But I did it pretty successfully with that little pump.
Dallas, wasn't that a Harbor Freight pump?
No, I did not do a Harbor Freight one.
Oh, you ever tried one of those?
No, Doug's got one.
Oh,
And I'll just tell you that you can get the Harbor Freight ones. When you get ready to do a pump, you might want to talk to me about that too. But the Harbor Freight ones use a technology that requires oil,
mm,
and they pull a big vacuum, no question about it, and they work fast and they're inexpensive. But the big downside on those is there's a mist of oil that comes out every time you run.
oh,
So you want to get the oilless ones. I really believe that the piston type is really the type you want to get.
Yeah, I'll chime in. This is Doug. I have the 2 CFM from Harbor Freight. It's usually on sale for $80. And like Dallas says, the downfall is you have to make sure you don't put too much oil in the pump. That was my dilemma. I had too much oil in it, and that was a big drawback. But to answer your question, Paul, about the quantity of vacuum needed, you could have a 1 CFM pump, and it's just going to take longer to draw a vacuum than a larger pump. It's all going to get there in the end. It's just how quickly the vacuum will draw with the size pump you have.
Now that's absolutely true for vacuum bagging, but for vacuum clamping, it's also a function of how much leakage you've got around your connections. So you need to be able to keep up with the leakage around your joints. But if you're doing just a couple of 3 pucks, I did it with this 6 puck setup I've got. I've done it with a small pump, and you'll be fine.
so Dallas, just another question.
Code.
So, sorry, go ahead. So, just a quick question about the tubing. You said this is drip irrigation tubing. Is that a hard material, or it's got to be hard, right? Because otherwise you just collapse the tubing.
No, it's a hard material.
Yeah. Because some of the drip stuff is soft.
No, this is the hard stuff.
Okay.
Hey, Dallas, my first leaning into this was when I talked with Doug about doing some vacuum bagging, and he turned me on to Joe Woodworker. And then the last time you gave this talk, I was really impressed with what you could do with clamping, and I had also started to mess around with doing epoxy. And so it just made sense that some sort of vacuum system would find a good use in my shop. And I guess I'm bringing it up because you did build a Joe Woodworker system, right? Do you happen to
I built 2 of them.
Okay. Do you happen to bring one of them?
You know, I didn't have my coffee this morning. I took off and left my 2 pumps at home. I was going to bring one of them along just as an example.
Yeah.
I left my computer at home too.
Hey, you remembered your jacket though. That's the important thing.
Yeah, but I had my coffee. So no, I didn't bring mine with me, but I've made 2 systems, and they've really worked well for me. If anybody's thinking about doing it, they've got a complete set of plans on there. If you're going to do it though, I'd sure suggest give me a call or shoot me an email, because I can give you a lot of tips on the do's and don'ts on it, and a few things about the sourcing some of the supplies.
And also, Dallas, the plan itself is open source and available on Joe Woodworker's site for anybody to look for guidance. He does that
Correct.
opposed to then promote sales of his kits. But at the same time, if you want to get a good sense of what his design is and what other people have done with it, there's an exhibit gallery of all sorts of people's projects, and step by step from his guide. And it's just a really good resource, as Doug originally turned me on to.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, I will tell you that he has some things there on vacuum clamps and vacuum pucks. Do not buy his pucks. They're really crap. They just do not work. His design is to take something like this and put the same gasket material on the back and run the hole all the way through, and then have it to where your puck is clamped to the base or to your bench by sucking down by creating a vacuum to the bench. that's an interesting idea and a quick and easy way, and that's okay. But he also has some valves. His valves do not work. Don't even think of buying those. They're marginal at best.
Valves as in the ball bearing depression valve that you have, or something else?
The one I bought commercially has it. Yeah, they're both ball valves that have a spring behind them and have the pull down with the vacuum or open up when they're pushed down. But they have to have enough spring tension to overcome a good vacuum.
Right. Okay.
And the ones that he have just are way too weak to work with a decent vacuum system.
Got it.
Does your vacuum pump, I mean, once you activate it, will hold the vacuum, or does it cycle to maintain a certain vacuum?
Well, once again, it depends on the material. Mine's the one at the shop. Let's start with the one at the shop. The one at the shop is set up to be either way. You can have it run continuously or run within a range of vacuum pressures. That's the way my pump is set up at home too. I can run it continuously or run it with a cycling. I have a big enough pump and a big enough reserve tank. If I have a piece of like cherry, some closed grain wood, and put it on here, my pump will only come on every couple seconds, maybe for 2 or 3 seconds, maybe once every 2-3 minutes. There's that little leakage going on there. But if I put a piece of MDF on there that's say 1/2 inch, no finish on it, it's going to cycle maybe every 20-30 seconds. There's just that much leakage that goes with it in an open material. Or if I had white oak, it was thin.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Dallas,
Yes.
could you make pucks that are double-sided and just put them on a bench?
And that's the way the Joe Woodworkers is, and exactly right. Some people will do that. I don't like it at all because once you release the puck, then the pucks are, once you relieve the vacuum, the puck's moving all around. You got to get it positioned and put down your wood and then put the pressure down again. I don't care for that at all, but yes, you can. And you also have to have a bench that has a good enough finish on it. It doesn't have any marks, or you're not going to get leakage around your bench too.
Yeah,
So if you're putting it on melamine or something that was smooth, it would work fine.
Yeah, something you haven't chewed up, huh?
Yeah.
Can we do a favor for Peter Tobias and let him know that there's a raised hand function rather than having to raise his hand physically?
Well, is it like that? I can't find it on my screen. If you tell me where it is, I'll find
In the participants menu, you'll find it in the bottom right-hand corner. There's a raise hand button, and you bring up the participants menu by clicking on participants, which is one of the icons at the middle of the bottom of your screen.
Okay, so I clicked on
So when you bring up participants
menu,
you can click raise hand at the bottom right-hand corner.
maybe it's going to come up. Whatever version I have of Zoom doesn't seem to have that.
Hey, Peter, on your participants window, is there an ellipsis, 3 dots in the lower right-hand corner?
No, there's
Yeah,
there's only leave meeting.
There's
Okay,
no
sorry, so Peter, normally it's there, okay?
the
Just like that.
participants window, not your main window.
Oh, in the participants window, you mean the one that's showing me?
No, the one that shows everybody's name.
It comes up when you click the participants button at the bottom of your screen. I'm assuming you're using Windows or Mac, so I don't know what else you might be using.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is. Let me just ask a
Go ahead.
question, and I'll investigate that. The issue is if you're generating a lot of chips, do you have a problem with getting them sucked into the ports and so forth?
Okay, good question. I do not have a problem with that. For one thing, it's being held down, so it's not there, but there's protection. Michael, can you once again go to my phone?
Oh, you need to start your video on that phone.
Did I lose my connection?
It's just,
There we go.
timed out. I can't spotlight it when it's not turned on.
Oh, I don't know how I shut that off, but, well,
The video is there in small. There we go.
We just had to get there.
okay. So if you look at the foot switch, you see down there, there's a little filter right here. And that will filter out any sawdust or material that would be sucked in through the vacuum line. And that protects the system. If you look at the back of our vacuum pump system, and that's the way mine's built also, there's also a filter on the back end of the lines here. This one, by the way, needs to be empty. But that's a problem that can happen with both vacuum clamping and vacuum pressing. If you just leave an open line there with the vacuum sucking, it's going to suck everything off your bench.
Okay,
Okay. Okay, you can take me off, Michael.
Okay.
Hey, Dallas, what's
Yes.
what's it like to be in the shop?
It's weird. Feels good to be in here, but it feels weird not having a whole bunch of activity going on. Okay, guys, anybody else? I do think the vacuum clamping adds another useful tool to my toolbox. It's something I really like using. I probably use it at home. I probably clamp with vacuum clamping more than I do just using my vise or my bench dogs. It's just so much more convenient. I think you might enjoy it too. I hope that if anybody decides to change it, you'll feel welcome to give me a call or to shoot me a message, and I'll do anything I can to help you get set up with either a pump or the system. I do intend to buy material as soon as we can and have this set up at the shop. For anybody who wants to be able to use it at the shop, we should have this set up when the shop reopens. Certainly we can get the material again from our suppliers. It won't take long to cut some of those on the CNC.
Hey, Dallas,
Yes,
if you're winding down, could I plug a few upcoming events?
sure can.
So this evening at 6:30 is the first of the Fusion 360 beginner sessions. We have a combination of advanced users and beginner users, and there's a little bit of homework, watching a couple of videos, but at 6:30 you can begin your journey to learning Fusion 360, which is a free yet very powerful design piece of software that can be used with all sorts of digital tools. Then on Wednesday, for anybody you know who might be a beginning woodworker, Doug at 7 p.m. is doing another one of his Fast Start series. This one is the 5 steps to squaring boards. And it's just going to be so fantastic for anybody who's not understood the logic of that before. It just does this really, really well. And if you know beginning woodworkers, this is the session to invite them to. And then on Friday morning, Dan Gonda is going to be running the weekly holiday gift build planning session. While the shop is closed, we still want to move our initiative forward to make things that can be sold during the holiday gift sale. And Dan runs a session where people check in, show what their plans are. We take inventory towards how we're working on achieving our goals. And so that is Friday morning at 10 a.m. And all of this ongoing can be seen at SDFWA. At the first page of the website is the list of upcoming, and there's another page which takes you to all the past events, which you can go back and watch and also engage in conversations around those topics because they're embedded in the forums system that we've built. Anyhow, lots is happening. Even though the shop is closed, even the association can't meet, we are trying to move things online, and I think we have a lot of evidence. Such great programs as the one we just saw, because I saw this once in a trial run, and I was so inspired. I went out and bought everything that was necessary except for the PVC, Dallas. So I just wait for these stores to open up so I can finish this project for the tanks, you know?
I have one other question. How would you, I assume that the jig that you currently have in front of you is for desktop use. What would you do to modify and use in a CNC hold down application?
Well, it'd be this very same thing. You could put your pucks directly onto the spoil board, or you could make an array like I have here that is that where you just screw down to the spoil board separately. But if you wanted to have an array, you could just have a plywood piece, have it so that you just screwed that down to the piece. But you can move these pucks, so that's the beauty of the pucks, is you just move them where you want them. But if I were going to have it to where I did it on a CNC, I would just have it to where I had 4 places that were recessed around the outside, and screw that into my existing spoil board, and then use that instead.
Got it. Thank you.
If I may, one of the things that is typically done, at least on a CNC, because you really do need that spoil board layer, is there's a version of MDF which is really porous. The word light is in the name of that MDF somehow, and so you basically put a puck system like that below the very porous MDF, and then you're able to hold down your material through the MDF. So the MDF is still there as a spoil board, but it's porous enough that the vacuum actually pulls. You're obviously losing some as you draw through that material. At least you have that buffer between your puck system and your cut piece.
Yeah, I wasn't going to get into that part of it, but yes, you can do that. If you wanted to make a really sophisticated one, you could take a large piece of this high density plastic and do a series of these just as a continuous piece. And if you got the valves, then you can just put down a piece of any size and it's permanently down. That's the other way that it can be done. I've seen it done like that online. I've seen some examples of that where that's been accomplished. If you look at the big commercial ones, they use the ultralight MDF, but they take big pumps. The one up at Palomar, they've got a 4x8 sheet that they put down. They use MDF in it, and they suck through the MDF, but they're using 2 5-horse vacuum pumps. They're both 3-phase. That thing's sucking a lot of air. So they pull it up, but you can put a 4x8 sheet down and completely suck it onto the table.
Hey, Dallas, let me see if I understood the HDPE version of a bed. Is the HDPE then the spoil board?
It is.
And how are your pucks? Are they recessed below the surface?
The spoil board becomes the piece itself becomes the spoil board. The spoil board becomes the high density plastic becomes the spoil board, and you just have the gaskets set in an array built into it.
Yeah.
And if you end up cutting through one, then you have to just put in some more of the material to fill it in.
Got it. Okay, good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If you look online, you'll see some examples of that. Most people will do it in a series of pucks, so like this. That's what I've seen done before. If you don't, because it takes a big vacuum pump to be able to pull it, I think, through a spoil board of any size.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, guys, thanks for joining us today. Once again, if you need help later on, you want to build a system, give me a buzz. I'm happy to help you out.
Thanks very much, Dallas.
Thank you very much, Dallas.
Thanks, Dallas. Great pitch.
I know.
Thank you.